There is a question so basic, so fundamental to the daily reality of being a human body in a physical world that nobody asks it, not because it's embarrassing, though it is, not because it's trivial, though the modern world treats it as trivial, because the answer has been so thoroughly replaced, so completely overwritten by the product that now occupies the space where the answer used to be, that the question itself has been rendered invisible. The question is this. For the roughly 300,000 years of human existence before 1857, how did people clean themselves after using the toilet? 1857, the year Joseph Gaiety of New York introduced the first commercially marketed toilet paper in the United States. He called it Gaiety's medicated paper. He sold it in flat sheets, 500 to a package, each sheet watermarked with his name, marketed as a medical product for the prevention of hemorrhoids. Before Gaiety, there was no toilet paper industry, no roll hanging on a spring-loaded holder beside the porcelain bowl, no multi-billion-dollar market for a product that every human being in the industrialized world now considers as essential as food and water. And the modern mind, confronted with this timeline, does something revealing. It recoils. It produces a mild disgust response at the thought of a world without toilet paper. It imagines filth. It imagines discomfort. It imagines the past as a grotesque, unhygienic nightmare from which commercial paper products finally rescued us. The recoil is itself a product, manufactured, installed by a century and a half of marketing that has successfully convinced the industrialized world that the only way to clean the human body after elimination is with a product that didn't exist before 1857 and that most of the world's population still doesn't use. Because here's the fact that the toilet paper industry needs you not to think about. The majority of human beings alive today don't use toilet paper. Over 4 billion people, more than half the global population, use water. Not as a backup, not as a poor substitute for paper, as their primary method, as the method their cultures have used for centuries or millennia, as the method that every medical and hygienic analysis, when conducted honestly, shows to be superior to paper. This raises a simple but critical question. If water is more effective than paper, why does the Western world use paper? The deeper I went, the more the answer revealed itself as a story not about hygiene, but about industry, about the creation of a market where no market needed to exist, about the replacement of a free, universally available, superior cleaning method with a consumable product that generates recurring revenue and that must be purchased, used, discarded, and purchased again in perpetuity by every human being in every household in the industrialized world. Start with what people actually used before 1857, not the caricature, the documented reality. The silence was deafening when I started looking, because the historical record of pre-toilet paper hygiene practices is not sparse, it's extensive, it's documented across cultures, and what it documents is not the absence of hygiene. It's the presence of a different system, a system that worked, a system that was, by measurable standards, more effective than the one that replaced it. Water, the bidet, the lota, the tabo, the shatafa. Every culture that documented its hygiene practices in detail describes the use of water for post-elimination cleaning. The Islamic world formalized water-based cleaning as a religious requirement over 1400 years ago. The wudu and istinja practices described in the hadith literature specify water as the mandatory cleaning method, with detailed instructions for technique that leave no ambiguity about the thoroughness expected. The practice isn't casual, it's codified, it's prescribed, it's maintained across 14 centuries of continuous practice by over 1 billion people. In South Asia, the lota, a small water vessel, has been the standard cleaning instrument for thousands of years. In Southeast Asia, the tabo serves the same function. In Japan, the washing toilet, which combines a toilet with an integrated water cleaning system, has been standard in Japanese homes since the 1980s and is now present in over 80% of Japanese households. Japan, the most technologically advanced consumer society on Earth, looked at the choice between paper and water and chose water, not because Japan couldn't afford paper, because water is better. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. But water wasn't the only pre-paper method. And the deeper I went into the historical and archaeological record, the more I found that the pre-paper world wasn't improvising. It was engineering. The tersorium, the Roman cleaning instrument, a sponge mounted on a stick, kept in a vessel of salt water or vinegar water, shared among users at public latrines. The modern mind recoils at the sharing. But the salt water and vinegar were antimicrobial. The sponge was more effective at cleaning than dry paper. And the system was maintained, cleaned, and replaced as part of the infrastructure of Roman public hygiene, the same infrastructure that produced the aqueducts and the bathhouses and the sewage systems that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years after Rome fell. The pessoi, ceramic discs used in ancient Greece for post-elimination cleaning. Smooth, oval, purpose-made ceramic pieces that archaeologists have recovered from ancient Greek latrine sites. Not improvised, manufactured, produced specifically for the purpose, shaped to be comfortable and effective. The Greeks didn't grab whatever was available. They made a product, a reusable product, a product that wasn't consumed and discarded, but that was cleaned and used again. The chugi, wooden sticks used in ancient China and Japan, bamboo spatulas, smoothed, sometimes wrapped in cloth, practical, effective, reusable, again, not improvisation, manufacture, purpose-built tools for a daily function that every civilization addressed with intentionality and engineering. The deeper I went into the pre-paper cleaning methods, the more I found that every civilization had solved the problem. Not identically, but effectively. And the solutions shared a common characteristic that the toilet paper industry has spent a century and a half working to obscure. They were reusable. Every pre-paper method, from the Roman sponge to the Greek pessoi to the Asian water vessel to the European cloth, was either reusable or, in the case of water, infinitely available. None of them were consumable products that had to be purchased, used once, and discarded. None of them generated recurring revenue. None of them required a supply chain stretching from forest to pulp mill to paper factory to distribution warehouse to retail shelf to bathroom. None of them created a market that could be monopolized, scaled, and made essential through the elimination of the alternatives. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every investigation I've conducted. A free or reusable solution is replaced by a consumable product. The replacement generates a market. The market generates an industry. The industry generates the cultural conditions that make the free solution seem primitive and the consumable product seem necessary. Here's where the timeline becomes specific. Because the introduction of commercial toilet paper in 1857 didn't immediately replace the existing methods. The product was expensive. It was a luxury. For decades after its introduction, most Americans continued using whatever was available. The Sears Roebuck catalog, which was famously repurposed as bathroom reading and cleaning material, corn cobs, leaves, cloth, newspaper. The transition from free methods to purchased product was slow, resisted, and driven not by consumer demand but by industrial marketing. The toilet paper industry's growth didn't correlate with demand. It correlated with the elimination of alternatives. As indoor plumbing spread and the outhouse disappeared, the catalog in the outhouse disappeared with it. As newspapers consolidated and became more valuable, using them as cleaning material became less practical. As cloth became associated with poverty rather than thrift, the reusable rag was stigmatized. The industry didn't convince people that toilet paper was better. It eliminated the alternatives and then occupied the vacancy. And the marketing that accompanied the product's rise reveals exactly how the cultural transformation was engineered. Go look at toilet paper advertisements from the early 1900s through the mid-century. The language is consistent: hygiene, modernity, civilization. The advertisements don't compare toilet paper to water, which would lose. They compare toilet paper to the makeshift alternatives that had replaced the older, more effective methods. They compare their product to corn cobs and newspapers and present the upgrade from corn cob to soft paper as if it were the only axis of improvement available. The possibility that water, the method used by half the world, the method that is measurably more effective, the method that was available in every home with indoor plumbing, might be the actual alternative. This possibility is never mentioned, never compared, never acknowledged. The deeper I went into the marketing history, the more the omission looked deliberate, because acknowledging water as an alternative would have collapsed the market. You can't sell toilet paper to a population that understands that the plumbing in their own bathroom provides a superior cleaning method at zero additional cost. The bidet, which was standard in French and Southern European bathrooms, and which could easily have been adopted in American homes during the same period when indoor plumbing was being installed, was not just ignored by the American market. It was actively stigmatized. Go trace the cultural history of the bidet in America. The association between the bidet and European decadence. The implication that the bidet was a device for questionable purposes. The cultural coding that made the bidet seem foreign, unnecessary, suspiciously intimate. The coding wasn't organic. It was manufactured by an industry that needed the bidet to remain un-American because the bidet eliminated the need for the industry's product. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. The bidet was standard in European homes. It was not adopted in American homes. The reason given is cultural preference. Americans just didn't want bidets, but cultural preference doesn't emerge from a vacuum. It's shaped by advertising, by product placement, by the systematic association of alternatives with foreignness, with oddity, with the un-American. The bidet didn't fail in America because Americans tried it and rejected it. The bidet was never offered as a standard option in American home construction because the industries that controlled American bathroom design had no financial interest in offering it. Here's where the medical evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Because the comparison between paper and water isn't a matter of preference, it's a matter of measurable cleanliness. Pull up the studies yourself. Research comparing the effectiveness of toilet paper versus water-based cleaning consistently shows that water removes more fecal matter from the skin than paper. The difference is not marginal. Paper smears as much as it removes. It pushes material into skin folds rather than flushing it away. It leaves residue that water removes completely. The comparison isn't close. If you had any other substance on any other part of your body, if you had mud on your hands or food on your face, you would never consider wiping it with dry paper and calling yourself clean. You would use water. The idea of cleaning your hands after gardening by wiping them with dry paper and declaring them clean would strike you as absurd. And yet, this is exactly what the industrialized world does, multiple times per day, with the most bacterially sensitive area of the human body. The deeper I went into the dermatological literature, the more I found that the conditions most commonly associated with the perianal region in Western populations, hemorrhoids, anal fissures, chronic irritation, pruritus, ani, are less prevalent in populations that use water-based cleaning. The abrasion of dry paper against sensitive tissue, repeated multiple times daily over years and decades, produces chronic irritation that water-based cleaning doesn't produce. The toilet paper isn't just less effective, it's actively damaging. The product that the industry sells as a hygiene necessity is producing the conditions that the medical industry then treats as common ailments. And here's the environmental thread that connects the toilet paper industry to the largest pattern of all. Because the scale of the industry's ecological footprint is staggering. The average American uses roughly 100 rolls of toilet paper per year. 340 million Americans. Over 30 billion rolls annually. In the United States alone, each roll requires approximately 37 gallons of water to manufacture. Each roll requires roughly 1.5 pounds of wood. The toilet paper industry consumes tens of millions of trees per year. It uses enormous quantities of water, chemicals, and energy to produce a product that is used once and flushed into a sewage system that then requires additional water and energy to process the waste. The irony is so precise, it borders on parody. The industry uses vast quantities of water to manufacture a product whose entire purpose is to avoid using water. The water that could have cleaned the body directly at the point of need, with no manufacturing, no transportation, no deforestation, no chemical processing, is instead used in a factory to produce a paper product that is less effective at cleaning than the water that was used to make it. The deeper I went, the more the toilet paper industry started to look like the perfected form of every market creation I've investigated. A free, effective, universally available solution, water, replaced by a consumable, inferior, industrially produced product, paper, through the cultural elimination of the free alternative and the stigmatization of every culture that maintains it. The populations that use water are described as lacking toilet paper, as if the absence of the inferior product were a deficiency rather than a choice. The developing world is described as needing toilet paper, as if the adoption of a wasteful, less hygienic product were a marker of civilizational advancement. And Japan sits there, quietly, with its washing toilets in 80% of its homes, its population enjoying a cleaner, more comfortable, more medically sound daily experience than any population that relies on paper, proving every day that the most technologically advanced society on Earth chose water over paper and never looked back. I'm not telling you to rip the toilet paper holder off your bathroom wall. I'm telling you that the product you consider essential didn't exist before 1857, that the method it replaced, water, is measurably more effective by every hygienic standard, that the populations that still use water have lower rates of the perianal conditions that paper causes, that the industry that sells you the product has spent a century and a half stigmatizing the alternative that would eliminate its market, that the most technologically advanced consumer society on Earth uses water, that the environmental cost of manufacturing a product whose function water performs for free is measured in millions of trees and billions of gallons per year. I'm asking why the Western world adopted the inferior method. I'm asking who profits from the adoption. I'm asking why the bidet was stigmatized in America by the same commercial interests that sold the product the bidet replaces. I'm asking why 4 billion people who use water are described as lacking something rather than having chosen something better. I'm asking why you were taught that dry paper on skin is hygiene and water on skin is foreign.